There is something about certain women that touches a man's heart without her saying a single word. She doesn't need to shout, demand, or chase. Sometimes she simply remains silent, and yet he feels her more than anyone else, as if an invisible energy accompanies her. A presence that speaks without making a sound. Carl Jung believed that this type of woman has access to something deeper, a psychic influence that stems not from outward appearances or behavior, but from a place many have forgotten, the center of her own soul. This woman doesn't enter a room to prove anything. She arrives and is simply perceived, not because of her clothes or her words, but because of a calmness that fills her, a quiet allure that doesn't announce itself but gently imposes itself. It's as if the temperature of the room changes around her. Her silence is not uncomfortable. It is a silence that soothes, purifies, and gives space to breathe. Even those who have never encountered this presence before feel something, even if they cannot explain it. Maybe you've experienced this. A man who seemed distant, rational, cold, suddenly starts seeking you out even though you haven't said a word. He becomes restless, confused, almost obsessed. You wonder, but I didn't do anything. And that's precisely where the secret lies. There is a power that needs no noise, a vibration that does not beg for love, but acts like an ancient call. Jung called it the symbolic effect of presence. It's not about what you do, but who you are when you're at peace with yourself. This woman, who drives him crazy even in silence, tries nothing. She follows no tips, no rules, no strategies. She's simply there. In a way that few can be, she wants to convince no one, prove nothing, and that's precisely why she becomes unforgettable. The male unconscious is not only drawn to gestures or words, but to what escapes its control, to mystery, to the unexplained absence, to the calm she radiates, to a gaze that reaches deeper than the surface. Her gaze does not judge, nor does it seek approval. It doesn't invade, it penetrates. This confuses because many men are used to women who explain themselves, adapt, and fear being misunderstood. When they encounter a woman who simply is, without fear of misunderstanding, something within them stirs. It's as if their ego disappears for a moment. In that small space of silence, the unconscious begins to speak. But how did this woman reach that point? How did she learn to stop fighting for love and start being felt? The silence that attracts is not emptiness, but restrained intensity. A soul that doesn't need to explain itself because it has already accepted itself. A woman who has heard "you're too much" many times and realized that this too much was only the other's fear of her fullness. Instead of shrinking, she bloomed. Instead of being quiet to fit in, she remained silent, to expand. That's where the shift begins. For she realizes that true power doesn't lie in being seen, but in being felt, not in being acknowledged through words, but in being remembered without reason. The woman who touches a man even in silence is the one who has learned to live in her own stillness, who has conquered storms within without running from herself. She looked in the mirror and stayed to rebuild. Stayed to be reborn. That's why her presence carries a sweet weight. The weight of an entire soul. When a woman stops molding herself to please and starts living her deepest truth, the way she's perceived changes. Even if she doesn't speak, even if she seems distant, her emotional field becomes magnetic. The man begins to miss something he never really had. Her most authentic version. Maybe she was by his side for months or years, but only in her silence does he realize, I never really knew her. That is the beginning of an awakening in his unconscious. He doesn't understand it with his mind. He feels it in his body. The lost, the unseen, that which he never appreciated. This energy cannot be faked. It's the result of an inner return, of slow, deep healing, of someone who has stopped shrinking to fit into spaces never meant for her. It's the moment she gives her silence the value that once belonged to others' approval. And this silence becomes presence, not just any presence, but one that is felt even from afar, that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. You might now ask, how can I reach that point? How do I become that woman who leaves traces even in silence? The answer lies less in doing and more in being. It is a path of reconnection with yourself. Nothing you can fake or copy. It's a state you awaken. The woman who remains felt in silence is the one who has learned to trust what's within her. She no longer fights to be heard, for she knows her vibration speaks before any word. She knows true love is not begged for, it is felt. That respect is not forced, it is reflected. This authentic presence becomes an invisible beacon for those who can see deeper. That's why she is in no rush, forces no connections, seeks no quick answers. She trusts life, time, the energy she emits. And it is this quiet trust that makes him uneasy, because the man who once thrived in the game now faces a woman who doesn't play, doesn't compete, who is simply whole. And that disarms him, for he senses that the weapons he once used, rehearsed seduction, fickle attention, empty promises, no longer work. None of it works, for she doesn't live from the desire to be chosen. She has chosen herself. And when a woman truly chooses herself, everything around her changes. She becomes a safe place, but not for everyone, only for those ready to meet her at the same depth. The woman who remains, felt even in silence, carries a truth within her that few can hold. She has learned to listen to herself, and that changes everything. For while many are swept by the noise of the outer world, by messages, social media, and quick responses, she has allowed herself to slow down. She has connected with the tenderest parts of her inner being, those that no one sees, that fit no selfie or cliché. She made a choice. Instead of shouting to be seen, she whispers to herself. And in this silent process, she found a voice no longer dependent on others. A voice that isn't lost when someone leaves, that doesn't tremble when someone stays silent, because now she is her own companion. This emotional self-sufficiency changes everything around her. The man feels it. He senses that he's not facing a woman who needs him to exist, but a woman who could choose him even if she doesn't need him. And that's what disarms him, breaks the game, turns the key. Carl Jung said that true influence doesn't come from effort, but from integrity. This woman is in harmony with her feelings. She doesn't hide what she feels, but she also doesn't dramatize to be seen. She has learned to breathe deeply and understand that there's no need to rush to justify herself, that love doesn't need haste, and that the one who truly wants to know her must dive deep, for she no longer lives on the surface. She doesn't give herself away with the first pretty gesture, doesn't fall for sweet words, because she's lived long enough to know that souls recognize each other in silence, not in performance. The woman who drives him crazy without saying a word is the one who has looked her own pain in the face, who is not afraid of being alone, who does not beg for attention, because she has found something more valuable within herself than any fleeting romance: peace. And this peace, when it is real, is felt even by those who have never experienced it. A man, no matter how rational, distant, or confused he may be, senses it. He cannot name it, Yet something stirs within him, as if a voice inside says, "With her, I don't have to pretend, but I also can't lie to her." That is the silent power of the conscious woman. She makes no noise, yet no one forgets her presence, and when she leaves, she takes something irreplaceable with her, the access to the place of peace she gave him. And no matter how hard he tries to replace it, distract himself, or avoid it, he will always remember, not what she said, but how he felt beside her. Because that is what matters, what remains when everything else falls silent. If you are hearing this now, you may be in a phase of silence yourself. Maybe you've stopped writing, stopped insisting, stopped chasing, and wonder if he notices, if he feels it. And I tell you with full honesty, he does feel it. Maybe he won't admit it, maybe he tries to ignore it, but he feels it. Because the silence of a woman who is again connected to her worth is not an ordinary void. It is a mirror. A mirror that shows him what he has lost, what he did not appreciate, what he may never find again. And yet this woman does not wait for regret. She does not live for the return. She moves on, maybe with pain, sometimes with longing, but with her head held high and a calm heart. Because her self-love has become greater than any unsatisfying answer. This decision to no longer beg is what makes her so extraordinary. It is not pride that silences her, but awareness. It is not coldness that makes her withdraw, but affection. She has decided not to hurt herself anymore by trying to reach those who lack the depth to receive her. And so she leaves traces, even in silence, traces of presence, of truth, of a femininity that cannot be bought. Do you understand? This woman does not want to appear irresistible. She simply respects her own time. And this self-respect is what creates the magnetism. What many call mysterious energy is nothing more than a woman who loves herself enough not to appear where she is not welcome. And when this woman loves, she does not love carelessly. She gives her whole heart. But if there is no reciprocity, she withdraws her energy with the same dignity with which she gave it, without drama, without revenge, simply with serenity. And the man feels it. He feels it when she pulls back. He feels it when she disappears. He feels it when she no longer waits. Because her silence is not vengeful, it is sacred. And when the sacred leaves, it leaves a void. Not just any void, but one that echoes, that unsettles, that is never filled even among other voices. If you've read this far, a part of you is alive, awakened, on its way home. And I want to ask you from the heart, share in the comments a word that describes this moment for you. Maybe return, awakening, peace, or whatever you wish. And if you felt that this video touched you deeply, subscribe to the channel, not as an automatic reaction, but as a ritual of connection. Every word here is written with intention, and if you felt it, you belong here. This space is a hug, a place to remind you that you are not alone, that there is an invisible network of women who are awakening, feeling, and living the same process. Together we are changing more than just relationships with Dandy. We are changing the world. Thank you for being here, truly. The woman who has learned to be silent at the right moment is not hiding, she is protecting herself. There is a big difference between silence born of fear and silence born of maturity. And when this silence is born of maturity, it becomes healing, it becomes a force. Because instead of reacting to what hurts her, she retreats to reflect on what she still feels. It is not coldness, but emotional awareness. And this awareness changes everything. Carl Jung said every change begins with discomfort, an inner restlessness that quietly whispers, You no longer belong here. That is exactly what many women feel before they begin to change, before they fall silent, before they stop chasing, before they retreat into silence. And it is not pride, not a tactic. It is the body telling them that it's time to go inward. And when she follows this call, something realigns. In that silence, she begins to hear what she previously ignored. The small daily acts of self-betrayal, the yeses that really meant no, the hugs she gave without ever receiving one back, the plans she made alone, the promises she accepted out of fear of loss. All this appears in the mirror of her awareness. And it is not easy, but it is liberating, because by clearly seeing where she abandoned herself, she begins to reconnect. That is where her presence arises, a presence that needs no explanation, that does not need to please, that simply exists fully and firmly and thus leaves traces. The woman who embodies this presence does not need to speak what she feels, because her energy speaks for her. She does not need to justify her absence, because the echo of what was is enough to be felt. She does not need to ask to be remembered, because her absence speaks loudly enough to never be forgotten. Men notice it, even those who seem the most rational, even those who claim it means nothing to them. Their subconscious perceives when a woman changes, when she falls silent out of self-love, when she stops justifying herself, when she no longer reacts to old patterns, and in that moment something breaks in them, because they lose the power they thought they had, and they don't know how to deal with it. Many will try to return, but not out of real remorse, rather because her silence unsettles them, the feeling of having lost something valuable without knowing exactly what. And here lies the difficulty. The woman who has been silent out of self-love must be careful not to fall into the trap of recycled affection. Her silence must not become a trap. It must remain sacred. And that is the greatest challenge, to remain steadfast even in the face of empty apologies, repeated promises, and a longing that brings no change. She now has a new task, to be the guardian of her own peace, to protect what she has rebuilt within, not like a wall, but like a garden, a place that welcomes those who come with truth, but that no longer opens its gates to those who come only out of habit. This changes her way of loving. She now loves without losing herself, without erasing herself, without begging. The woman who drives him crazy, even in silence, is the one who no longer seeks her worth in the actions of others. She has already recognized it, integrated it, and shares it only when she wants to. If not, that's okay too, because she has understood that there's no rush to be chosen. When she chose herself, everything else lost its urgency. She no longer runs against time. She walks with it. This way of living is revolutionary because it contradicts everything she was taught. They told her women must constantly give themselves, always be understanding, sacrifice for love. But she broke that cycle. Now she chooses a love that includes her, respects her, listens to her, even in silence. And the most beautiful thing is, by doing so, she inspires not only men, but also the world around her. Other women begin to realize that it's possible to be strong without becoming hard, kind without submitting, to love without abandoning oneself. Jung believed that true feminine power is healing, that when a woman reconnects with her soul, she begins to heal everyone around her, not through effort, but through presence. And that's exactly what this woman does. She enters a room in silence, and the atmosphere changes. Not through magic, but because her energy cleanses, her truth realigns, her calm breaks the chaos. She becomes a living example of what it means to be awake. And even if few understand it, she no longer needs external validation. She no longer lives for appearances, but for something greater. Self-respect, self-love, integrity in her emotions. And this kind of woman leaves traces, rare, subtle, but eternal. What few realize is that the woman who has learned to be silent has also learned to love differently. A purer, fuller, truer love. Because she loves not out of need or fear of loneliness, but out of choice, presence and freedom. This unusual, vibrant form of love frightens those who have never experienced anything like it. She no longer lets herself be driven by impulses. She observes, feels, listens to herself first. And if something in her body says no, she respects it. Even if her mind says yes, even if the other insists, even if the moment seems tempting. Because she knows any connection that separates her from herself is not worth it. She no longer negotiates her peace. This woman lives at a different rhythm. While the world demands urgency, she cultivates time. While others try to prove their worth, she simply allows herself to be. And this simple, authentic being makes her so extraordinary, because it's easy to find people who want to be loved, but rare to find someone so connected to their own essence that they no longer have to ask for it. When this woman appears, even in silence, she becomes a mirror for the lack of depth in others, a mirror for their emotional urgency, a mirror for what they lack and what she unintentionally reveals through her presence. Her silence is not emptiness, it is an answer that says, I am no longer available for what does not see me. And this answer, even if never spoken, is felt, because the body speaks, the soul calls, and those who are sensitive will hear it. Many men will interpret this silence as disinterest, others as pride. But those who are truly ready to grow emotionally will recognize that this silence is an opportunity, a unique chance to meet someone who has already freed herself from empty urgencies and now only seeks the truth. A woman who is silent out of self-love wants no games, no fantasies, no applause. She wants connection. It's that simple. Someone who won't run when things get deep. Someone who doesn't hide when she opens her soul. This woman is tired of loves that make her doubt herself. Now she seeks connections that make her bloom. And that changes everything. Because when she realizes that she can be happy without depending on others' approval, she begins to truly live. And when a woman truly lives, she becomes a seed of change wherever she goes. She doesn't need to raise her voice. Her energy speaks for itself. The silence of this woman is a portal, a space others can dive into if they dare. But few do, because in that space there are no masks. Everything is seen, felt, exposed, and not everyone is ready for that emotional nakedness. Yet those who are never forget what they found there, because this silence is not absence, but concentrated presence. She carries an entire universe within, stories, scars, laughter, falls, new beginnings. All of it vibrates in her energy, especially when she is silent. Because in silence the soul dances, the gaze reveals, the skin speaks, the vibration expands. If a man is sensitive enough to feel it, he understands it, even if he can't explain it. What changed this woman the most is that she stopped convincing. Now she invites others to approach with truth, stay with intention, linger with presence. And if that doesn't happen, she doesn't beg, she creates space for herself, for the new, for what resonates on the same frequency. And that's where the man feels the difference. He is used to women who demand, who ask, who push. But this woman doesn't demand. She invites and still tolerates. No compromise, Not out of coldness, but out of love, love for her own heart, her own silence, her own path. Those who love like this leave marks that time cannot erase. When she distances herself, it's not to punish, but to preserve. And if you can still feel her from afar, it's because her presence has taken root, deep roots, planted not in gestures or words, but in something greater, in the silent energy of a person who is whole, even without guarantees. The silence of this woman is now her greatest kingdom. There she hears herself. There she understands what really matters. Above all, she has stopped fixing what was never hers. She no longer needs to convince anyone. She knows what she carries within. And this certainty is so rare that it often unsettles. Because we live in a world where women are constantly told to prove that they are enough, sweet enough, strong enough, smart enough, beautiful enough, lovable enough, interesting enough. But this woman no longer plays that game. She knows. The more she tries to prove, the more she loses herself. Now she moves lightly, does not compete, she simply is. And that is what he cannot forget. Because she did not display herself, did not beg, did not explain, did not plead for space. She simply existed. This full, silent, and steady existence becomes an echo, an emotional resonance, a memory, an impression that remains even when everything seems over. Carl Jung said the unconscious manifests in our lives as fate. And when a woman awakens, she stops being someone else's destiny and begins to choose her own. She no longer follows repeated patterns, no longer accepts half-loves. She recognizes when others are not ready and no longer tries to force anyone to awaken. She no longer wants to save or be saved. She walks with those who also walk, no longer goes ahead, and no longer carries others on her shoulders. She no longer asks anyone to come, because she is complete alone. And this emotional independence is powerful. Not in the sense of dominance, but in the sense of presence. She becomes a woman who says everything without words, who changes her surroundings without noise, who attracts without trying to seduce, because her vibration speaks for itself. Those in alignment come closer. Those who are not leave on their own, without pain, without struggle, just with the awareness that not everything has to continue. Not every story must become a future. Some only exist to teach you to love yourself better. This woman does not deny her feelings. She allows herself to feel, to cry, to miss. But she no longer drowns, no longer loses herself to save others. She looks pain in the eye and asks, "What have you come to show me?" And there, between the tears, she finds herself again, with her strength, her light, her depth. She always returns, but differently, more complete, stronger, more herself. And that is exactly why he does not forget her, because what she gave him, he found nowhere else. Maybe he searched in other faces, bodies, voices, but something was always missing. It wasn't her body, it was her soul. The space she created, the safety she radiated, the gaze that said, even in silence, "I see you." And when a woman sees a man like that, he never feels seen in the same way again. Even if he can't explain it, even if he runs, even if he denies it, his subconscious keeps it like a code only she has deciphered. But this woman doesn't hold on. She knows it's not about being unforgettable, but authentic. If she is remembered, fine. If not, that's fine too. She doesn't live for others' gaze, but to stay true to her own essence. The freedom she has achieved comes at a price. Not everyone can stand the light she carries. Not everyone stays, but she no longer trades her light for company. She has learned to be alone and no longer feels lonely. For a man who always had control over his attachments, this is unsettling, because he realizes he cannot manipulate what doesn't depend on him, and he sees that what he lost can't be bought anywhere. This woman, who once gave in, now chooses. Who once begged, now observes. Who once tolerated, now is silent. And this silence is not indifference, but it is self-care, peace, self-love in its purest form. There is no shouting, no teaching, only feeling. Whoever wants to feels it, whoever doesn't moves on. That's how she lives, with grounded feet, a free heart, and an open soul. Not for everyone, but for the truth. And when someone approaches her like that, she knows, because now she trusts her intuition more than ever. This trust is the foundation of everything, because she no longer doubts what she feels. And that alone is liberation. The woman who drives him crazy, even in silence, has no formulas. She has truths. And that's why, even as time passes, life goes on, other names come, she remains. Not out of attachment, but because her energy doesn't fade. Her memory is strong. Her love, when she gives it, carries something ancient, and the male subconscious knows it, feels it, keeps it. She didn't want to be remembered, she simply was. And no one can take that away from her. If this silence is also yours, if you carry stories that were never told, if you have ever loved in silence or walked away without a cry, then this is your place. Here, every word is written with soul, and every silence is honored with love. Because when a woman is consciously silent, she changes everything around her. And when she finds herself, she never again accepts being only half. We are connected from soul to soul.